So there's something I came across in Genesis that actually really interests me, and I think I want to discuss it. And it's basically this idea that if you observe in Genesis, one of the things God did when He was creating the world is there's this constant use of the word separate. There's this constant demonstration of God saying, let there be day and let there be night, creating a distinction between them. For example, let me just read a verse to give an example. So if you read Genesis 1, verse 3, it says, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and He separated the light from the darkness. Separated the light from the darkness. If you go further to verse 6, you will see, let there be voids between the waters to separate water from water. So there's also separation. So God made the void and separated the water under the void from the water above it. If we move further, you will see also in verse 14, let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night. Let them serve as a sign to mark sacred times and days and years. So essentially, you see in the course of creation, God trying to create a distinction, saying, oh, this is night, this is day, this is light, this is darkness, this is heaven, this is earth, this is sky, this is below the sea, this is above the sea, this is plants, this animal, this. There are clear distinctions that were created. And what that brought to mind is this fact that even as God being the ultimate, he understands, he was able to deploy at the place of creation boundaries. Because what's the sense of separation? What's the sense of saying oceans cannot go this far? Oh, sky cannot go this far. Moon should be in this place and things like that. It was establishing boundaries. And one of the things that is very, very fundamental to having law and orders in place is boundaries. Boundaries. So if there are no boundaries, there won't be order. If there are no boundaries, there won't be law, actually. So what even makes some of, like for example, if you say gravitation law now, what makes it be in place is because there was a boundary that has been set. What makes certain law, even in our system in place, for example, is because there are certain laws, as there are certain boundaries that have been set. And I think when we look consciously into the concept of boundaries, as regard the fact that it creates a distinction, it will help us to appreciate how we can bring in order into the affairs of our lives, and how that is actually very, very important in becoming effective at what we do. Because at the end of creation, the Bible says God looks at everything and He saw that it was good, and it was then He was able to take rest. So if in what we are doing, we are not intentionally creating boundaries. For example, I'll give a clear example to this. If in your marriage you don't create a boundary between let's say in the kind of access you give to other people, in the kind, let's say you're a guy, you're married, and normally you have a lot of female friends and all of that, and you got married, you don't create boundaries now that you're married. Or maybe I don't know, I'm just kind of looking for example. Maybe even in the way, if you're a leader, maybe you lead an organization, if you don't create a boundary in the way you relate with your colleagues, with people and things like that, there is a disorderliness that will come, if that boundary is not created. Because one of the challenges that also, I've seen this in this workplace, one of the challenges that also come with running an organization where there is no boundaries is the fact that you actually don't let the subordinates know the extent to which they can interact with you or they can relate with you. And they will not know when they are making errors. They will not, and I'm not saying this maybe just as regard personal relationship. I'm also saying it as regard work. There are certain work that are meant for certain level. There are certain work that are meant for maybe your senior colleague. It is beyond your pay grade, so to say. So if you do not set boundaries, in the way you govern your life, in the way you administer your family, in the way you administer your personal life, your academics. It's good to have friends. It's good to be involved in extracurricular activities. I do advise a lot of young people to go into extracurricular activities and all of that. But if you don't set boundaries in a way that your involvement in those things do not begin to bring about disorderliness in your academic life, that there's going to be issue. So I think we have to understand that boundaries are needed to be able to bring order in place. And when we have boundaries being established and quite frankly followed, we're able to bring order into the affairs of our life. I would say, for example, in the situation of Nigeria today, one of the challenges that we have is that there are no boundaries. And I think one clear, I mean, when there are no boundaries, there are no order, then corruption prevails. For example, let's say a governor, for example, if a governor understands boundaries, you know that certain money, for example, they are not meant to be touched. It's meant to be used to commit to making life better for people and all of that. So essentially, I think it's just good to always have that at the back of our mind that boundaries are meant to be created, boundaries are meant to bring others in place. Thank you.